Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our wonderful guest today is Rabba Dr. Melanie Landau. Hello and thank you for being with
Hi,
us.
my pleasure.
Our Parsha this week is Tetze, and in this Parsha we count 74 of the Torah's 613 commandments, mitzvot. So this is Parsha with many topics. These include the laws of the beautiful captive, the inheritance rights of the firstborn, burial and the dignity of the dead, returning a lost object, the duty to erect a safety fence around the roof. Our parsha also includes laws governing the purity of the military camp, the prohibition against turning in an escaped slave, the duty to pay a worker on time, and many more things. Ki Tetze ends with the obligation to remember what Amalek did to you on the road on your way out of Egypt. The first pasuk of our parsha says, כי תצא למלחמה על אויביך ונתנו אדוני אלוהיך בידך ושבית שביו. If you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God will deliver him into your hands, and you take his captives. So, Rabbi, there are so many laws in this parsha. Is this a case in which we see the trees but not the forest?
Can you just say a little bit more what you mean by that, please?
Well,
Do you mean that we get to...
Is there a coherent theme to this parsha behind the many laws?
Okay, I think that's a really... I think that there's something about... I think we could maybe see certain themes that could be spread across things, but at the same time, I think the question or the searching for coherence is, I just want to honor that, like honor the searching for coherence, and something about the complexity of life and also especially now, I think in this time of COVID and the global pandemic, where uncertainties are more sometimes rising to the surface, that there's something about like the messiness, that yes, there are themes where you could say, yes, we could like link this and we could link that, but I think there's also something about our sort of vulnerability in the face of the messiness of what life is, the intensity, the different layers of things, of challenges, of what come up in life, and something about the sort of escaping just full coherence or full order, like, is reflected to us, I think. But I honor our searching for coherence and our searching for order, and at the same time sort of name how that full coherence in a way sort of in a way escapes us as we like open ourselves to see the complexity of things and all the different layers.
Right. Now, one of the things we see in the parsha is that we deal with things very big like war, and quite small like returning a lost object. Why do we need a detailed discussion about returning a lost object?
Yeah. So I think I actually, what you said about like the big and the small is related to Chazal's sort of statement about treating the small as the big, like not saying, oh, because it's small, we put it aside. But there's something we're called to pay to the detail, and attention to detail is the way that we express love and care. And it's like the big things, we don't have the big things if we don't have the small things. The big things are made up of the small things, and there's something about that we can't, and maybe actually that comes around to your first question about losing a sense of the forest for the trees, is like we need the trees and we need the forest. There is no forest without the trees. There is no like big picture without the the details, without the attention to detail. There is no community without each individual and how we're interacting with each other. It's not it's not hanging in midair. It's grounded. It's grounded in how we are to each other.
Right, and a lot of these trees in the parsha are, deal with property, how to guard one's property. So what is there spiritual meaning to having property?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I love that question. I think that there's something about, I think, what the Torah and mitzvot, and even I'm just having the sense of like the Vav connecting heaven and earth, that's actually bringing significance and the divine into the world, into the grounded world. And our possessions is like a clear way of doing that. And how we treat each other's possessions is a direct expression of saying, no, it's not like there's it's like, I think it was Rav Salanta said, my spiritual needs are my neighbour's material needs. It's like we're saying we're not going to separate between the spiritual and the material. And in the same way, that how we treat someone's possession is related to how we treat them and how we respect them. That their possession is like an extension of them on the one hand. But then there's also this paradox, because part of what the Torah kind of like initiated was the whole thing with like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of thing, and the way the rabbis interpreted that was that they were kind of like initiating that sense that we don't take life for property. Like there was a way before that sometimes like life was taken for property. So I'm just bringing the two sides of it. On the one hand, we say, yes, property is connected to how we show respect for another is also respecting their property, but there's also a limit to that we don't take life for harming of property. That's like a boundary. It's not like property becomes equal to life. It's like an extension. It's derivative, but life is first. And property, like when we do a misdemeanor in property, we don't get to sort of like take someone's life for that. So there is like that significance of the looking after property, but there's also a limit. It's like an extension of the person, but it's not replaceable with the person.
Right, and one of the things that we see in our parsha that are most remarkable is that the Torah keeps talking about the many rules of war with the captive wife and with other things that we must do as we go to war. So war has rules, and then when the parsha ends, it ends with a war with no rules. We break all the rules when we fight Amalek. So why do you have such contradiction in the same parsha? All the rules on the one hand and the war without boundaries at the end of our story.
I'm just kind of like feeling into that question, and what arises for me about that is that everything's sort of like got its context, and that everything's got its context, and sort of in the same way that I was saying before about like we want to try to find coherence, like in every situation of a war, this is what we need to do. But it's like this is also showing us, even with regard to war, there are all these strict rules, but then there's different contexts that like demand different responses. Like the situation demands of us something different, and that's part of, I think, us needing to take responsibility. We become mature. We have to own our responsibility. We can't just like take in general sort of this authority from the outside and just follow it like a robot. We actually need to be activated and exercise responsibility and presence and see like which situation is requiring what thing of us. And that So that's also how I see it. That nothing. It's not sort of like it's not like an easy way out. It's not an equation. It's not just a simple like cut and paste. It's like each situation requiring these. It's not a way actually to regress into someone who just follows something, but it's a way that we have these values that we have to grapple with, and an invitation to like step up to ourselves, but informed by this authority.
Rabbi Dr. Landau, thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.